Hello and thanks for listening. Welcome to the Terran Space Academy, where we help prepare you for a bright future in the space industry. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and help us out on Patreon if you can. We appreciate your feedback, and often learn important facts from you. I was recently asked if the BE-4 could be a better engine than the Raptor. I answered off the cuff, without double-checking my facts. This was a rookie mistake, and I should know better. It has been several years since I took a hard look at Blue Origin. As an act of contrition, I bring you the Blue Origin BE-4 Deep Dive. I support every person and company trying to expand humanity into space, but I don't see Blue Origin flying anything to orbit yet, so I don't spend as much time on their designs. Because I didn't go back and review their systems, I mistakenly said that the BE-4 engine was open cycle. It is not. The Blue Engine 4 is in fact an oxygen-rich closed cycle full combustion engine, potentially putting it on par with the Raptor. To atone for my error, we are about to take a deep dive into the BE-4. We'll start with Blue Origin itself. Blue Origin was founded in 2000 by the richest man on Earth, Jeff Bezos. Mr. Bezos, as everyone knows, is the owner of Amazon. Mr. Bezos, like Elon Musk, also wants to make space cheaper and more accessible. He spoke of this goal as early as 1982 when he graduated from high school as valedictorian, and told the school paper that he wanted to build space hotels, amusement parks, and colonies for up to 3 million people in orbit. He said the whole idea is to preserve the Earth. It cannot then be argued that he is just a multi-billionaire trying to compete with Elon Musk. The two in fact have different routes to similar goals. Both want to preserve the species and the Earth. Elon Musk believes that colonizing Mars is the best way to accomplish this. Jeff Bezos believes that colonizing the Moon and building orbital habitats is a better idea. Mr. Bezos was influenced by the science fiction author Neal Stephenson and the writings of the scientist Gerald K. O'Neill. Mr. O'Neill had written in his 1976 book, The High Frontier, Human Colonies in Space, how people might construct a large cylinder habitat in orbit that you could spin on its long axis, allowing centrifugal force to generate artificial gravity. After watching the film October Sky in 1999, Mr. Bezos decided he was ready to get started. He founded Blue Origin, rather secretively, in 2000, and did not seek publicity until 2015. During that time he worked on several projects. One of the first was Charon, if it was named for the Greek god, and Charon if it was named for the moon of Pluto. Charon was a Blue Origin test vehicle for vertical launch and landing and flew in 2005. It used 4 Rolls-Royce Viper Mark 301 jet engines, producing 13.3 kilonewtons of thrust. After developing vertical ascent, control, and landing software, Blue Origin switched to rocket engines. The first Blue Origin rocket engine was the BE-1. This was a simple pressure-fed engine using hydrogen peroxide monopropellant over a catalyst, generating 8.9 kilonewtons. 9 BE-1 engines were used in a Blue Origin test vehicle called Goddard. This was a small rocket-powered concept demonstrator, used to further develop hardware and software for soft takeoffs and landings. It flew in 2006 to a height of 85 meters, and after a total of 3 flights it was retired. This success was announced by Jeff Bezos saying, "We're working patiently and step by step to lower the cost of spaceflight." The BE-2 was a bipropellant rocket engine burning kerosene with hydrogen peroxide and producing 140 kilonewtons. 3 of these were used to test a prototype booster seen here. The prototype conducted its first successful takeoff and landing, but on its second flight, control was lost at an altitude of 13.7 kilometers at a speed of Mach 1.2. The vehicle was destroyed by the flight termination system, but the capsule was safely recovered. Every failure can be a lesson, and this proved that Blue Origin could safely get their capsule away from a crashing booster. To get more efficiency, Blue Origin decided to switch to hydrogen and oxygen. They started developing the BE-3 rocket engine in 2013. The BE-3 was the first engine Blue Origin planned to use in an actual spacecraft. The BE-3 is a combustion tap-off engine. To understand what that means, let's look again at turbopumps. This beautiful graphic by Flight Control Propulsion will help us understand. Helium works best, but other gases can work also. Once the pump is spinning, fuel and oxidizer start flowing into the combustion chamber. To continue powering the pump, you need a continuing flow of high-pressure gas. You can get this high-pressure gas from a small preburner, like in the Merlin engine here, where fuel and oxidizer burn in this small chamber, with the exhaust being fed into the turbopump here. You can also, as Blue Origin did with the BE-3, run a pipe from the big combustion chamber straight to the turbopump, powering it that way. Both of these designs usually throw the turbopump exhaust away. You can see the outlet here. The reason it's thrown away in the tap-off cycle is that if you try to feed back into the combustion chamber, you are trying to draw power from the same pressure you are feeding back into. The pressure will equalize and you can't power your pump. The other option is a preburner as before, which can dump the expended gas overboard, or use some of this cooler gas from the preburner around the inside of the nozzle to protect it. This was done with a little of the gas in the Saturn V V1, but most of it was vented overboard, so the pressure differential will produce more power. The BE-3 rocket engine is capable of reliable restarts and deep throttling, making it ideal for a suborbital rocket that will come back and land. The Blue Origin suborbital rocket is called New Shepard, to honor Alan Shepard, the first American to go into space. Full-scale test vehicles started being researched in 2010, and a complete vehicle was started in 2015. In November of 2015, the test vehicle flew to an altitude of 100.5 kilometers, crossing over the von Karman line into space, and performed a successful soft landing. This was the first time that any rocket had crossed the 100-kilometer mark into space and made a successful vertical landing. Blue Origin and Jeff Bezos deserve recognition for this achievement. But just 1 month later in the same year, SpaceX successfully landed a Falcon 9 booster from orbit. Blue Origin's success is an amazing achievement. While SpaceX has been perfecting the Falcon 9 reusable rockets and reducing the cost of getting mass to orbit, Blue Origin has been relatively quiet. But after the crash of their early booster prototype in 2015, they seem to have perfected their suborbital rocket. The New Shepard is an 18-meter tall single-stage to space rocket. It uses the BE-3 hydrogen rocket engine that produces 490 kilotons of thrust and can burn for 110 seconds. New Shepard 1 flew in 2015 with loss of the booster but recovery of the capsule as noted above. New Shepard 2 flew later in 2015 and was the first rocket to cross the von Karman line and land safely. It flew 4 more times, the last in 2016. New Shepard 3 first launched in 2017 and made 6 more successful flights. New Shepard 4 first flew in 2021 and has had 2 flights total. That means the New Shepard system has flown 15 times, with only 1 booster failure early on. Just recently, Blue Origin did a wet dress rehearsal with New Shepard 4, where they fueled the New Shepard, loaded workers to simulate the flight crew, unloaded them, and launched the rocket. The first crewed flight of the New Shepard will be in May of 2021 with New Shepard 4 if everything goes well. Blue Origin also has orbital goals. You can't build all those orbital space hotels without getting to orbit. To accomplish this goal, Blue Origin started building the Blue Engine 4. Blue Engine 4 is planned to power the 2-stage reusable New Glenn rocket. The New Glenn will be 98 meters tall with a diameter of 7 meters. It will be able to get 45 tons to low Earth orbit or 13.6 tons to geostationary orbit. This makes it more capable than a Long March 5, but less capable than a Falcon Heavy. The first stage is 57.5 meters tall and will use 7 BE-4 engines burning methane and liquid oxygen. The second stage is 23.4 meters, including the 2 large vacuum nozzles for the BE-3U engines. The BE-3U is an open expander cycle hydrogen fuel engine. An expander cycle rocket engine only works with liquid hydrogen or methane. These liquids are pumped around the combustion chamber and nozzle, absorbing thermal energy and protecting the rocket engine from overheating. The liquid hydrogen in the BE-3U expands on heating to a high-pressure gas, which is used to power the turbopump. The BE-3Us will power the upper stage of the New Glenn, with the 2 of them getting the second stage the rest of the way to orbit. Let's take a close look at the BE-4. The BE-4 was started in 2011 and was publicly announced in 2014. The BE-4 burns methane and oxygen. 2 parallel programs started research, with one developing the power pack, including the turbopumps and valves, that provide propellant to the combustion chamber injectors. The second program worked on perfecting the injectors themselves. These components were tested separately until 2015 when a full engine was assembled. The first engine exploded on testing, as most first rocket engines do. Since then, several have been built and tested successfully at full power. The BE-4 can be seen here. Here's a person silhouette for scale. Blue Origin was kind enough to label some parts. These include the liquid oxygen boost pump, the oxygen-rich preburner, the main turbopump assembly, with a spin start down here, the regeneratively cooled thrust chamber assembly, and the nozzle. Let's see what we can figure out that they didn't label, and put up several different views so we are clear on how this engine works. Here again is the oxygen-rich preburner. where this pipe, bringing the oxygen, is burned with a little bit of fuel to power the turbine. This is a manifold over the turbine that helps the hot gas spin the turbine blades. Here you see how this works in a turbopump system. In this system, we see the fuel impeller being closest to the preburner. But in the Blue Origin system, the oxygen impeller is closest to the preburner. You can see the oxygen boost pump again here. Here you can see the scale, as a Blue Origin employee works on one. This component is 3D printed with an aluminum housing and a Monel turbine. Monel is an alloy of mostly nickel, 52% to 67%, with a lot of copper, and some iron, manganese, carbon, and silicone. This boost pump pre-pressurizes the liquid oxygen. We saw this type of system being used with the Space Shuttle main engines, a modified version of which is being used on the Space Launch System. These low-pressure pumps help make sure the main turbopump does not cavitate. Cavitation is where a component spinning in a fluid causes gas bubbles to form. Cavitation can damage and destroy a pump. Blue Origin does not publish a lot about their rockets, and they don't have the same fan base as SpaceX does. That doesn't mean they aren't doing great things. Let's see how much of this engine we can figure out. Here are two more views of the BE-4. This view is from Blue Origin, so we can trust it. This one is a photograph, so we'll trust it too. And finally this view, also a photograph. I looked at some drawings of the BE-4, but they do not seem accurate. Like this early design drawing, which had the turbo pump on the top of the engine. That is not how it looks now. Let's start with this angle. Here you see the inlet for the liquid methane fuel, and the inlet for the liquid oxygen. Be careful. This looks to be connected, but it is not. If we look at it from this angle, we see that these are separate components. Let's go around to the other side and look at the turbopump assembly, also called the power pack. Let's draw a line across here. This part is the turbine. Let's draw another line here. From here to here is the oxygen pumping system. Under these manifolds are impellers. And below the oxygen pumping system is the methane pumping system, also with impellers. Now we will trace fluid flow through the engine. We will first follow the oxygen intake system. Here we can see the oxygen booster pump. This appears to be powered by a hot gas line here, coming from the preburner, and the line connects to this manifold. There should be a turbine under that. The turbine spins and there should be a shaft up the middle. The shaft will be connected to an impeller and inducer. These systems usually have a significant bypass area, so as not to impede flow once everything is running at full speed. Coming along this large pipe to here, and we see an oxygen intake manifold. Under this should be the main oxygen impeller, powered by the turbopump, to throw the oxygen into the combustion chamber. Remember that turbines draw power from hot gas, and impellers move fluids. Between the hot gas manifold here and the cold methane impeller manifold here is what looks like another manifold for an impeller. Let's look at the engine from this angle and zoom in. This is definitely a manifold, and it has communicating lines here and here. This must be the collection manifold for the cooling shroud that goes over the combustion chamber and down here over the nozzle. This would receive hot methane from the collection shroud down here and send it into the turbopump assembly, so that an impeller could then pump it into the combustion chamber. That would make sense. The cold methane starts up here, comes down through this pipe, it curves around and comes up into the bottom of the turbopump. There is a shaft running all the way through the pump, spinning the impeller under this manifold. The cold methane is pumped through this device, which should be the main fuel valve. If you will note, there's a small line coming off here. This must be the methane feed line to power the oxygen-rich preburner. You can see it more clearly if we zoom in and isolate it here. The cold methane goes through the main fuel valve and into the nozzle cooling jacket here. It goes down around the nozzle cooling it, then comes back up to be collected here. It looks like it is also sent up through these pipes to the second collection manifold here, then pumped by this impeller to the combustion chamber here. This is the combustion chamber. You can see it isolated from the other components better in this image. Here is the throat. These look like sensors. And if we go back to this view, supplied by Blue Origin, and zoom in, We see that those connecting pipes do indeed seem to be going into the hot methane collection manifold. After the methane was pumped through this part, to be collected and pumped to the combustion chamber. Now let's go back to the turbopump. Again we see the preburner powering our turbine here. Inside this housing should be the oxygen impeller, which pumps oxygen into the combustion chamber. This again is the turbopump assembly, also called a power pack. So now we have oxygen and methane flowing to this giant combustion chamber. What can the Blue Origin BE-4 do? According to Blue Origin, the BE-4 can produce 2,400 kilonewtons of thrust with a deep throttle capability. How does that compare to the Starship Raptor? As you can see here, the Raptor is smaller than the BE-4, but the Raptor can put out 2,210 kilonewtons of thrust, almost as much as the much larger and heavier BE-4. Blue Origin will use 7 BE-4 engines for the first stage booster to launch the New Glenn. SpaceX will need about 28 Raptors on its first stage Super Heavy booster, but 28 Raptors can produce 61,880 kilonewtons of total thrust, allowing SpaceX to lift 100 tons to low Earth orbit. The New Glenn will have 7 BE-4s producing a total of only 16,800 kilonewtons of thrust. Then the upper stage of Starship will have 3 sea level and 3 vacuum Raptor engines, giving a potential thrust of 13,260 kilonewtons for the second stage. The second stage of the New Glenn will be using 2 expander cycle BE-3U engines producing 710 kilonewtons each, for a total of only 1,420 kilonewtons. That is why the New Glenn can only get 45 tons to low Earth orbit, while the Starship system will deliver 100 tons. Is the BE-4 better than the Raptor? It may turn out to be more dependable, but we don't have enough data to say. The BE-4 is much larger and heavier than the Raptor, though exact figures are hard to find, producing 2,400 kilonewtons thrust from a chamber pressure of 13.4 megapascals, while the much smaller Raptor has a mass of 1,500 kilograms, with a thruster-weight ratio of about 200, producing 2,210 kilonewtons thrust from a chamber pressure of 30 megapascals. I think the Raptor is better. I also think Blue Origin thought too small. The New Glenn has a diameter of only 7 meters and is 98 meters tall. That's still a big rocket, but the Starship system is 9 meters in diameter and about 120 meters tall. There is no comparison. The Starship will dwarf and outperform the New Glenn. I think Blue Origin should swallow its pride and start developing a much larger rocket system. Go 10 meters in diameter, like the old Saturn V, and 150 meters tall. Put 12 of the BE-4s on the bottom. Now you're talking. In the meantime, the BE-4 can fly on the new Vulcan rocket system. The Vulcan Centaur rocket system is being built by United Launch Alliance to be used in the National Security Space Launch Program to deliver defense satellites to orbit. It will be 61.6 meters tall and 5.4 meters in diameter. It will consist of 2 stages with up to 6 GEM-63XL solid rocket boosters. The first stage will have 2 BE-4 engines burning methane, of course. The Centaur second stage will have 2 RL-10 hydrogen-fueled engines producing 210 kilonewtons of thrust. The specific impulse of these engines is a nice 448.5 seconds in vacuum. It can get 27,200 kilograms to low Earth orbit, making it comparable, but not better, than the reusable Falcon 9. The BE-4 had also been chosen to power the XSP spaceplane that was going to be built for the United States military. The XSP started off as the XS-1, a vertical launch horizontal landing spaceplane. The XS-1 was going to be built by Boeing and would be an autonomous spaceplane like the hypergolic-powered X-37B that is being flown by the Air Force now. DARPA had started working on the Experimental Spaceplane, or XSP, sometimes called the Phantom Express, in 2013. The U.S. military wanted a reusable plane capable of delivering 1,360 kilograms to orbit every day for 10 days in a row at around $5 million per flight. DARPA made the tragic error of selecting Boeing for this project, denying a partnership between Masten Space Systems and X-Corps Aerospace, and another one between Northrop Grumman and Virgin Galactic, the opportunity. I guess that makes perfect corporate sense. Why give a smaller company that would dedicate themselves wholly to your mission a chance, when you can give a massive corporation who could care less a bunch more funding? In all fairness, Boeing had built the X-37B, so there was at least a chance they would get the job done. Boeing chose the Aerojet Rocketdyne RS-25 derived RS-22 hydrogen-fueled engine instead of the BE-4. I don't know why anyone would think a small volume of hydrogen was better than the same volume of methane. They must have missed our lesson on this. Boeing was supposed to have 12 to 15 missions flying by 2020. Boeing instead took all the money, spent all the money, built and flew nothing, and said, following a detailed review, Boeing is ending our role in the experimental spaceplane program immediately. Asked about a possible refund, DARPA said that, per the contract, Boeing gets to keep the money. So the Blue Origin BE-4 will not be flying on that spaceplane. The Blue Origin BE-4 does look like a capable engine, but does not appear to be better than the Raptor. It may yet fly on Vulcan or New Glenn someday, but not anytime soon. Unless Bezos has a secret island with a fully built New Glenn somewhere. Thanks for listening. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and help us out on Patreon if you can. There is a link in the description. Ad Astra Pro Terra.